I love that, Jerry. I love that. Keep giving them heart attacks.
They need it.
Yeah.
We cornered another one. So like as soon as he's actually a senator. I'd never met him before. He's from up north. And we like as soon as and it was just me and a bunch of random people. And as soon as the elevator closed, I'm like, so now that we've got you here. He's like, wait a minute, guys, I'm a Republican. And I'm like, that ain't going to save you. You got to treat them like employees. Sometimes you have to make your employees a little fearful too, I think.
Well, that seems like a good point to go in on. And we're back. So,
Jerry Collins, everybody.
Yeah, welcome to the Join the Vibes podcast. No, I'm really excited to have you back for this last part of the episode and really dig in a little bit more to who you are and a little bit about what brings you to the cannabis industry. So sort of the question that we like to begin with for people is just what brings you to cannabis? I think a lot of people, it's, high school experiences, maybe it's college experiences, maybe it's, you had a parent who was a grower or whatever, be it, sort of what brings you to cannabis?
For me, I've used cannabis off and on, since high school days, which I think a lot of us in the space have, right? Mm-hmm. But really what kind of brought me back to and into the industry on the legal side was I was really having a lot of issues sleeping, hence the Big Dream. Big Dream Organics.
Oh, so we're already getting into the name. This is
I had I'd done some research. I'm like, CBD oil seems like a good thing because I've taken mountains of melatonin. I've done, everything from Tylenol PM to, just name the products,
sure,
right? And I was, I'm failing and, like 3 hours of sleep a night on, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, I promise you is killing you. People probably don't give good sleep enough of their attention.
Absolutely.
And so I started using some CBD oils and they were pretty much like tea-free, broad spec type things. And I'm, ordering stuff online because that was kind of where you got it back in 2017, 18, 19. Sure. And I was like, well, there's got to be, and I was having mixed results because like some of it was pretty good. Some of it was obviously, I guess in my opinion, far over the legal limit at the time. Mm-hmm. And then some of it was just complete trash. And, so I had no success with that. And I'm like, well, there's got to be a local place, in late 2018, early 2019, there's got to be a local place right here in Albert Lea that sells it. And so I made some phone calls and, looked around at some websites and stuff and nobody was doing it. Like one place had like, CBD isolate, like a hand cream or something like that, like 100 milligrams or something. And I'm like, well, that's not going to do the trick for me. And so having no luck there, I was like, well, I was at a point in my life where I had an opportunity to kind of do my own thing after spending a lot of time in kind of the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And, or as I lovingly refer to it, selling my soul. So I'm like, let's do this small business. Let's try and build something. And, so we started early in 2019, started out pretty much with just broad spec products and quickly moved into full spectrum and a lot larger product lines, working with a ton of Minnesota growers and companies early on. And that's always kind of been my method, is try and keep things as close to home as possible. And, like when people, break bread with them, there's a lot higher level of trust, than just some random faceless, nameless individual via email. So I prefer to work with Minnesota folks and, I've worked with a lot of them in southern Minnesota at one level or another. Kind of fast forward to today, we're deeply entrenched in the hemp-derived and low-dose markets. Yeah. And, some of the products that are coming out almost what seems like a daily basis are just, some of them are, there's still ones that are, you're like, maybe not. But for the most part, I think Minnesotans are they're killing it. Beverage markets, some of these edibles and stuff that are popping up with different, like functional additives and stuff like that. They're mushroom blends are one of my favorites, like the functional mushroom blends, along with, small doses of THC and CBD, CBG, CBC. We've got one that has CBC in it. And the beverages are kind of an interesting Minnesota phenomenon.
What's the phrase, like necessity breeds innovation? Like we have such
Brews in
innovative
this
progress.
case,
Yeah, there we go. Brews innovation for sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, Minnesota has a pretty storied history with microbreweries and craft breweries. And, like that's the perfect jump off platform to make some of the most awesome and best cannabis beverages to boot, and
finally accepted. Cannabis beverages finally accepted by stoners. And I know they're expensive, everyone says, but it'll only get better. I think the culture is going to grow for cannabis beverages as the market grows.
I think for me, the biggest thing with the cannabis beverages is how many of our customers are really, really getting engaged with them. And, I know that this will not come to as a shock to our alcohol distilleries and breweries, but I think those cannabis beverages are starting to really take a market share, and people are choosing what, in my opinion, is, all things in moderation are good, but, I think that's arguably you can call it a healthier alternative, as far as intoxicants go. And so, like, we get a lot of people, summertime last summer, it was like, pick up a 4-pack or an 8-pack or, a mix and match or whatever. And, it's like, well, everybody else is, tipping beers and whiskeys. We're going to, consume these cannabis beverages around the campfire, and then we'll be up at 6 a.m. making coffee while they're nursing a hangover till noon, And so
that's, I know I'm not really a big drinker myself, and went to the Dabbler Depot, their Dabbler event, which was a great time. It's a super awesome time, but also was sort of my first time getting drunk in quite a long time. And that experience the day after, I'm glad that I don't have that with cannabis. It truly is sort of just a different intoxicant leading to just different sort of side effects.
One's a plant, one's a poison.
I love that.
not supposed to consume ethyl alcohol.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Big Dream. So you talked about how it was sort of out of this need that you had, or this desire to find quality sleep.
Yeah.
What led, and tell us a little bit about what you do today.
So I'll just quick synopsis of what we've done in the last few years. So we opened up out at the Skyline Mall in Albert Lea, and we spent several years there. Super appreciative to the local owners that own that facility. Gave us a shot when some others kind of raised an eyebrow, because people forget that just back in 2019, 2018, like the cannabis scene was way different. Most of us consumers still didn't talk about it outside of our circle, right? Yeah. And so we spent several years there, increased the number of Minnesota companies we worked with, and, the products just keep getting better and better and better and more diverse. Growing, we right away, I got a Department of Ag license to be a grower and a manufacturer on the hemp side. More or less because our goal was to help educate everybody from local elected officials to local law enforcement to just the general population base. What's in this can originally started out as this plant,
For sure.
And, kind of getting in that compliance zone with the Department of Ag was kind of a neat deal too. Sometimes it was kind of a pain in my butt, but other times it was kind of cool just to see how everything, kind of the inner workings from a compliance perspective, and, pretty educational over the last few years doing that.
Actually, I want to ask you about that because your hometown police department is the first one to combine with MDH and do these combined searches. How has that been being like a hometown operator with all this starting?
So we like to claim that we're Albert Lea's first and finest cannabis establishment. So we have focused a fair amount on trying to remain compliant, with our, being licensed to a Department of Ag. You're open to inspections, not just when you call them. But we actually, last Wednesday, we had our first Department of Health cannabis product inspection at our location, 1039 South Broadway.
Perfect. Thanks for throwing that in.
You bet. So I actually wasn't there when they showed up, and our fabulous employee, one of our employees, Marissa, who's been with us for like 4 years now, she's awesome, super educated, and really knows products and really cares about people. So she called me. She's like, "Hey, police are here and another guy from the state. And I'm like, finally happened. All right, let's go. So I get down there, had a nice conversation with our, they've kind of got like, I don't know if they call them districts or regions, but there's inspector representatives from the Department of Health that cover certain areas. Had a nice conversation with him. He had some of our local law enforcement in tow. I think pretty much just as like an educational thing for them. Because, I mean, being the first one in town, I've gotten a lot of questions from our law enforcement community because every time, all the way back from like 151, 72, it's like, so is weed legal now then? Or like I can't write tickets anymore? So there's, one of the unfortunate things about the way that Minnesota's rolled this out is that normally when Minnesota creates a law, it immediately has an apparatus in it that shoves it down to the counties, cities, and municipalities, right? And in this case, that has not been the case.
Yeah.
And, so they're all kind of clamoring, trying to figure out what they should and shouldn't do anymore, what is legal, what isn't legal, so on and so forth. So I think, for them, that was probably a pretty good collab. As a longtime cannabis consumer, I'd just soon not have law enforcement in my store, but no offense to law enforcement folks, but it's old habits die hard.
Absolutely. Well, these were the people that have been enforcing cannabis prohibition for decades.
Yep.
The idea of saying, come into my shop where I'm selling cannabis products.
Around, ask questions.
Yeah.
Feels really wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely can understand that.
But my hope, and one of them is actually a new guy on, I think, the drug enforcement task force for our area. So my hope is that they took that time to hopefully, become more educated and kind of get an idea of, what is legal in this market right now, what isn't, and that gives them a little more insight. Mm-hmm. So that first inspection, we had one issue with labeling. It was a tincture that said use sublingually, and apparently the state has taken issue with the words use sublingually.
Yep.
I still don't fully comprehend it. I'm not sure what I don't understand the legal standpoint behind it, but I'm sure there's a lawyer somewhere that made that decision, and we'll go with that. I mean, it is what it is. It's a minor change for us. The labels on the products that we got 2 weeks ago already had the change that basically says use as needed in compliance with Chapter 63 HF 100.
Beautiful.
So it was a pretty simple fix for us. I believe there were 12 locations in the Albert Lea area.
Correct.
Not necessarily just within city limits. I think there was a couple outside of city limits, but we had one location that was not our location, but another cannabis location that was, pumping out a lot of THCA. Over 5 milligram gummies, I heard was another thing, or maybe it was just inedible. So there was a few things that were, just, I guess, kind of wildly non-compliant. And then, I imagine there was probably a bunch of other things, little labeling things and, keeping up. That's probably the single hardest thing in the cannabis space right now is just keeping up with how fast things change.
Oh, absolutely.
And so for, other cannabis businesses, labeling requirements are a big deal. They're really looking into that. And, I would argue that those of us that are in cannabis-only businesses are probably more well-versed on compliance and what is and what isn't compliant.
Yeah.
But not that, I guess that's not 100% true. There's some people that are just kind of running a store or whatever. And, it's like they figure that anything that a distributor brings them or is willing to sell them is compliant. And, I think we all understand that that's not 100% true.
Oh, right? Absolutely. And especially if you're
most of those guys aren't from here.
Correct.
So they'll hire a couple sales guys. They're based in Colorado or California, and then it's like, okay, you guys go drop this stuff off.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, a lot of the, I guess I'll just refer to them as national brands in the hemp derived Lodo space. They're attempting to field products that in theory or in their interpretation are federally legal. But Minnesota, one thing that we've done legislatively in Minnesota is we've really drilled down on that total post decarb concentration. And so, I've seen lots of, like carts are notorious for, well, this is Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, HHC, THCP, CHCV, and it's all one conglomeration, right? But every one of them is theoretically under a certain limit. So, but collectively, they're far surpass the limit. And, vape right now, and that's another thing I have no comprehension on, is why inhalable products are completely off the board right now. Like even CBD only carts. I don't understand the logic behind it, but I'm sure there's a lawyer somewhere that made that call for the state or the state department.
It's interesting that you mentioned that one, because we did an event the other night with the Office of Medical Cannabis talking through like what that inspection process looks like. And Margaret, who came to do the presentation, who runs that inspection division, even made a comment about how like we don't exactly know why all non-intoxicating cannabinoids are banned in smokable form, but they are. And so this is sort of what we're enforcing for now, but it's just a temporary rule. So I guess don't sell them, but keep them in back. No, don't do that.
Yeah, don't hide things in your back room.
No, definitely don't do that. Go back there. Yeah. Well, so a question for you. I think we've talked to a lot of different people that have perspectives on this issue. We've seen some people that have been in the industry for a number of years that have said, hey, enforcement has been a bad thing generally for me, and I really don't want to see a ton of enforcement waving in this industry. And then we see, I think, what is like the way opposite end of the spectrum, which is cannabis shop owners literally calling up the Department of Health or filling out their form online to say, this shop and this shop and this shop and this shop are selling illegal products and you should do something about it. Obviously, there's a lot of nuances to it. But if you were to sort of put yourself somewhere on that spectrum of enforcement is good because it protects good operators to enforcement is bad because cannabis enforcement is bad, where sort of do you fall generally?
I'm dead in the middle.
All right, there we go.
So both of those statements are true. Okay. So one, I look at that as low-key snitching, and I don't do that. I don't agree with that. Snitches are a dying breed. On the other hand, as a company that has really spent a lot of time trying to remain compliant in a wildly fast-paced, changing compliance environment, it sucks when your customers are like, hey, the place down the road sells this. Why don't you? And so, in my mind that I'm like, oh, I'm losing money because I'm not doing the wrong things right now. And, I think historically we can look at a state like California where compliance was their biggest Achilles heel when they did their legalization. So, John goes in, files for a business license, gets a cannabis license, is paying sales taxes, is doing all of the right things, is maintaining compliance, passes every inspection with flying colors. And then Jerry, the bad actor, comes in, pops up a pot shop right across the street from him, knowing full well I have 6 to 9 months before they burn me on it. I'm not paying taxes. I'm not doing appropriate testing on my products. I'm just making tons of cash, hand over fist, and not giving bleeding the guy across the street because now I'm selling my products cheaper than his. And then in 6 to 9 months, when I get caught, I move 3 blocks down the road and set one up right across the street from Tanner, who's doing all the right things. Fair. And then burn him down for 6 to 9 months. And that, that was a years-long endeavor in California specifically. And so as much as I really would just not want to have the government in my life in any real capacity whatsoever, let me live my life, I understand that apparatus should be in place, should be functional, and should give everybody a fairly even playing ground. And then you let's see who the best formulator is. Let's see who the best grower is. Let's see who the best products are out there, and maybe it's just marketing and you're selling the same stuff as 3 guys in town, but your packaging's way cooler and you're selling it for $2 cheaper. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But let that market work itself out. But it has to be on the same playing field.
You have to build it first.
Correct.
Yeah, one comment that Margaret made during her presentation that I thought was really interesting is she says, when they've been going through and doing inspections, the Minnesota brands, generally speaking, are pretty quick to update their products to make sure it's compliant. They're wanting to participate in this industry. It's the national brands that come in, sell their products, realize, hey, this product isn't compliant in this state, and say, well, we'll just go somewhere else.
Right. And we've had that happen, where like, we carried a product, and it was compliant for a time, and then the state makes a change, and we go back to this company and we're like, hey, this is non-compliant in Minnesota. Can you make a Minnesota compliant version? And, when you're the only state and maybe one of just a handful of their customers in Minnesota, it's much easier for them just to say, we're just going to focus on other states then, because Minnesota is doing weird stuff that's not necessarily the same as the rest of the country,
Sell in Wisconsin. I've seen a lot of businesses just pick up more in Wisconsin.
Manufacturers in Minnesota that were making at the time compliant products may have 10 pallets of a certain type of gummy that was compliant, right before 151.72, and now you're sitting on 10 pallets of gummies or whatever that may be, an end product, a finished product in a package that you can't move. Well, are you just going to eat that? No, nobody in their right mind in the game is going to just take an L on that. They're going to send that to a state where they can move it. Miraculously, there are several companies here in Minnesota that also have Wisconsin locations, right?
Absolutely.
I don't hate the player.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, Jerry, thanks so much for coming on today. We really appreciate being able to chat with you, being able to talk a little bit about your business, talk a little bit about what that inspection process was like going through your town, and then also just to chat with you generally about the news. You're sort of our first guest that we've had co-host with us. So
fun having you co-host.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fresh perspective.
Yes.
Calm down in the back.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with this guy.
I imagine you do.
Yeah, a
And it's
lot
been
of
cool. So, I've met John several times over at Uniflora Holistics. I met you there.
Yeah, for sure.
Twice. Obviously, I've met Steven.
Yeah, we chatted as we should get you on the show sometime, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah.
So really excited to have you
You were
out.
doing an
finally.
education session that day.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Oh yeah, that was a fun day. Oh, all right. Well, I think that's all we have for today.
So I have to take a moment for the Southern Minnesota companies because so outside of the Twin Cities sphere, sometimes we get slept on. So Lulu Magoo from Fifth Sun Gardens is such a rad dude. Is such a cool grower, outdoor grower. I think he was one of the first hemp licenses for high CBD production in the state. Lance from Southern Soda Growers is one of the most genius living soil growers out there. Cornell Urban Ag is another living soil guru. Doc Dabbs, Mason, Jeff and Tom from Superior Cannabis are killing it. And you just had him on
For sure, yeah.
from Superior Cannabis. And then I get some heat sometimes because of all the different people I work with. I'm working with cool people and I don't care what your opinion of them is.
I love that though.
That doesn't always line up well with some people, but other companies that are in southern, Crested River is another one that's murdering the beverage game right now, in my opinion. I think it's some of the best sodas out there. But I mean, there's so many talented growers, business people, and cannabis operations that are ready to go in Minnesota. I think all of those guys should 100% have a chance to, make it happen. And for me, normalization of cannabis is the big dream. Everybody has an opportunity now to buy safe, legal products, and you don't have to buy from a guy behind a 7-Eleven dumpster, safe, tested. Let's do it. Minnesota's ready.
I love that. I want a shirt now that says legalization is the big dream with the big dream
There you
logo
go.
on it.
I'll make you one.
Perfect. All right. Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Awesome.
For everyone listening or watching at home, you can catch us again in your feeds in just about a week. We got another episode coming out. Really excited for the one next week because we're going to be talking a lot about Canna Connect, talking a lot about some upcoming events. We got some pretty cool interviews, so be sure to listen all the way through for that.
That's another. You want to talk about people like Minnesota Cannabis College, Canna Connect.
Got it, Steve.
Yeah. You guys are elevating the industry far more than any legislator in St. Paul right now. You guys are doing such a phenomenal service to the community, and thanks to Dabbler Depot. I said it earlier. This is one of the coolest liquor stores I've ever stepped foot in, and they have a cannabis side to boot. And so, stop at Dabbler Depot.
And coffee and donuts.
Absolutely,
it's a cool place.
I mean, it's one of the coolest places in the city, I think.
Well, thank you for that. And also thank you for joining us in this mission of really just trying to help educate people on some of the amazing stuff going on here in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
I'll bring it to my grave. We got one of the coolest industries in the country. We just got to keep it that way.
Yes.